Um, I had a chat recently with Frank Zumo, a fucking amazing drummer, amazing guy, a mental health advocate, and we were just chatting about dad stuff. And he mentioned Rockstar, and I just had this weird epiphany. I was like, "Oh man, isn't it weird how like Rockstar fundamentally is rock and star, two words that in order to shine bright and excel, you have to have a solid foundation. That it's almost
Yes.
like celebrity and success goes hand in hand with mental health, right?"
Yeah. I think you have to have a strong base to get to anywhere. So I feel you there.
Let's talk about everything. Let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about the things that have been deemed taboo, and let's change the narrative, not just on what is strength, what is power, um, but also how this industry and ultimately the community at large, the world, should be, which is
Yeah.
just this, conversation. We don't have to agree. We don't have to even like each other. But how are we going to know anything and grow and better ourselves if we don't communicate?
Come on.
So that's it, man. Let's get into it.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah, I'm stoked. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Cameron Lavi-Jones, you obviously have a lot of lineage and history in your body, in your DNA. Like, tell me a little bit about where you come from, who you are, and then we'll get into your journey.
For sure. So I think I don't know, I have this running bit. I think it probably would have been weirder if I became like an orthodontist or something versus gotten into music. But I was really, really lucky to be born into a musical family. Both of my parents were actually on tour when they got pregnant with me. They were in this world music group called the Songcatchers. It was this 20-piece Native American jazz rock and blues infused group. My mom founded it with Charles Neville of the Neville Brothers, Arlie Neskahai, the songkeeper of the Navajo Nation, Mark Cardenas, and the whole band was centered around showing indigenous voices not as like just relics of the past. So their music was spanned like a lot of different things. The band was made up of all different people of all different walks of life. They had powwow drummers and singers along with a full band with it too. Um but it was I don't know, they would jump from like these like huge soundscape, like very indigenous focus sounding tracks to like 80s reservation pop hits. And it was like very cool seeing how like they specifically held space for indigenous voices by
Mhm.
utilizing them both as an instrument, but also to articulate like the whole point of this isn't just like something you're going to read in textbooks. This is something actively happening right now.
Yeah.
And I think musically, it did so much for me. For one, it gave me kind of some context that music and activism should go together. If you have something to say, it should be something that helps impact the world in a better place, even if it's just one other person. Um, Two, it gave me the context that regardless if you belong to whatever identities, you can still do your part to uplift a message, even if it has nothing to do with like your culture or your background or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Three, it showcased that I don't know, because of how many different people were in this band, it really was showing how like culturally all of us like a rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah.
And lastly, it really put me on to just kind of the culture of music. The reason why I say I was really lucky to be born into this family in particular is even though we didn't really have a lot coming up, like my folks weren't affording a babysitter like to leave me for like 3 months at a time because they were both in the band. So instead, they brought me with me. I was excuse me, they brought me with them, getting my
I
words all
got you.
jumbled
I
up.
got you.
But yeah, instead, they brought me with them, and it gave me the chance to be, in label meetings when I was, it literally in arms. Like, it gave me the chance to run around on stage and get comfortable to the point of like my dad having to tell stage crews like, hey, like go get him a stool and let him come sit next to me. Like it gave me the chance to feel involved and also feel, I don't know, kind of get your time in with a lot of those areas where it can develop like stage fright or like being uncertain about whether or not you belong in a certain space. All those kind of things that come up, especially when you're in the genre of music that I'm in, looking the way that I
Mhm.
do. It gave me so many tools and resources to know that the way that I'm going to belong in these spaces is by not denying myself the chance to belong in these spaces off rip.
Absolutely. So you were just to jump in for a second, you were literally and figuratively, like, born into music, and
Yeah,
you
no,
you were
my
you
parents got pregnant with me. I think they were on tour with Peter Gabriel.
okay,
I think they were doing the US leg of a world tour with them, but the project was awesome. I'll send you some links after this, but it was the music that I grew up on and just especially coming up on world music. It was really really cool. I think it did a lot to help me think outside of the box a little bit more too.
yeah. So you were, like, a touring musician before you were actually touring and or a musician. You were on stage on the road.
I think something like that. The only time I ever, like, really crashed out as a kid on tour was I think their last show of the tour was, at Bumbershoot, a very big, well-known festival up here in Seattle, very culturally important.
Mhm,
But they were doing this big tour homecoming finale at Bumbershoot, and my grandma, my mom's mom, um was babysitting me for the day, and it was the one show on the tour where, like, they were like, "Cameron, I'm so sorry, but like, you need to let your parents go do the show, da da da." And I was with my grandma at the time, and she was watching over me, but it was the first time the whole tour that I had cried because this whole time I thought I was in the band. You know, I was with them for all the group prayers, like the little pep talks before we get on, all the stuff, right? They're, you know, midway through the set, my mom peers over and she sees me crying and she's like, okay, all right. And so she waves that it's okay for me to come on stage. I walk over, she picks me up, she says, "Hi, baby." And I say, "Hi, mom." She lets me sing with her a little bit. She puts me down. My dad motions over to somebody, and I go back and I sit on my dad's lap, who's playing bass. And he says, "All right, you can sit here, but don't touch nothing because I still got to play the show." And
mhm.
I was so happy. I was like, cool. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. My grandma was cool about it all. I must have been like 3 or 4 years old or something like that. But that was my first like core memory on stage because I remember walking out when my mom motioned for me that it was okay, and me just toddling my little ass out there, and just I remember feeling like how warm the audience was, how
Mhm,
stoked they were to see like one like you know a family band, which is very cool and something very different. But
mhm.
I don't know, it felt like a very warm introduction into the world that I ended up dedicating my life to.
That's amazing, and I wanna talk about family definitely because I noticed that, I think your mom is your manager, s don't answer yet, we'll get into that, but,
Sure.
I mean, like I said at the top of the call, I really believe in discourse, and I think that, everything should be discussed diplomatically, and that's how we learn and grow, there's this concept that everything is everything and everything is nothing. Like my heritage, my religious views, my political views, they don't mean shit, but they do mean something. Just like your background, it means everything and it also means nothing.
Yeah.
Um, where I'm going with this is, you clearly have two upbringings, or maybe one upbringing, but two influences. You clearly wear them on your neck, right? It's the African and Jewish, is it?
Yeah, yeah. These two literally here, I'll even show you. These two, both of them don't come off. Like this is the kind of key ring you would use for like, I don't know, like your house keys or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And they don't come off. This one does simply off of like um there's I don't know, time and place a little bit, but these two specifically don't.
Yeah. So tell me about that. Like for me, this is what's interesting. This is the learning. This is the growth. Like having grown up in a loving, spiritual, musical household with two very different people that created one unity and ultimately created you. What was it like? How are the influences coming? How do you feel about these things?
Yeah, for sure. So, Man, I also feel really blessed because I was able to grab from so many different places. You know, both of my folks were really open to a lot of different genres of music. My dad managed to manage excuse me, my dad produced a metal band for a while when I was little. He's also a producer along with being a bassist. My mom, outside of the song catchers, has always been a really prolific singer-songwriter and like Americana artist. You know, I came up listening to a lot of records from a lot of different genres. My folks both had a shared record collection. And so I would sit listening to, you know, funk and jazz records um like Gap Band all the way over to like progressive jazz albums for the time, like Jean-Luc Ponty. He's this incredible jazz violinist. Um my mom, I grew up listening to a lot of one, her own music, but two, a lot of Sheryl Crow, a lot of Joni Mitchell. Um, and then truthfully, uh, once I got into middle school is when I started really kind of getting into my own influences. Like I was saying before with the song catchers, you know, it was world music. And
Yeah.
so having that gap of seeing activism and art being, you know, a unified front like that,
Mhm.
it was a real game changer for me when I first got a chance to discover System of a Down.
Okay.
And it was the first time I had heard music that was as pointed politically, socially, like, but also culturally for them talking about their own experiences. It was the first time I had had the same type of intention in art that the Songcatchers had, but in a heavier music context. So that was huge. But even going back even further than that, you were talking about these.
Yeah, like the religion, the spirituality, the
Yeah,
culture,
of course. So this actually was a bar mitzvah gift. It was the first time I had met some parts of my family for the first time, and not all of them, you know, spoke English. Um, my bar mitzvah was very, very musical, but the kind of synagogue that I went to was entirely one, it was all in Hebrew, and
Mhm.
two, it was entirely choir based. So everything was uh you know, congregational singing. Like everybody in the room is singing all together. And it gave way for like different harmonies and stuff like that. But I'm a Sephardic Jew, which means Middle Eastern.
Okay.
And being a brown Jew in that context, so much of that music, scale wise, like the way that chords were stacked, even like the structures of some of the prayers, really bled into the music that I do with King Youngblood. Like, in fact, actually, when we play the song that named our band, King Youngblood, we close shows with it, unless we're like doing something real fun and special or whatever. But we close shows with it, and at the end, there's this a cappella section that quite literally, all the melodies from it are lifted from my bar mitzvah portion. It's the same runs, it's the same like kind of spiritual moment in it, and especially for a song that's been so important to represent who we are.
Mhm.
It's been really, really important to me to be able to bring where I'm from to where I'm going.
That's awesome. Yeah, you mentioned some bands that, we probably both grew up on. You also mentioned, like, having a platform, having something to say. I think with art that it's not always political or social or justice based, that sometimes people just wanna share a good message of kindness, of love, of maybe even interpretation, like, "This is my love that I'm sharing, you can take it on however you want." So many of these bands that we grew up on, System of a Down, Rage Against the Machine, um, they do that, social and political messaging, but that goes back. I mean, like, Lennon was doing that, and, I mean, KRS-One, Public Enemy, it's been happening for a very long time. Do you know of, like, I'm not hugely familiar with world music, but do you know if there was that messaging within some of your parents' work or even further back?
Oh, for sure. I mean, my mom was the lawyer. She was the tribal lawyer for the Muckleshoot Indian tribe up here for the longest time. And you know, my dad had been in other bands. He had his own band called Edison Jones coming up. Uh, Damn, I remember he showed me, one of their vinyls, and it was the first time I had seen him with a flat top, and I was like, "My dad is fucking cool, dude." Um, but, uh but yeah, for both of my parents, so much of the music that they came up on absolutely influenced how they approach world music. My mom, when she put herself through college at the in Chicago, and while she was there, she was waiting tables and also doing the blues circuit, like getting trained up by like other blues legends in Illinois. My dad, Seattle born and raised, but he even did other, like unorthodox starts. Like in high school, he was in his school's bell choir, and like, he grew up playing. He was the bassist between. He had two other brothers and an older sister. My aunt Jeannie doesn't play any instruments, but she was always very, very supportive. My dad is next in the lineup. He played bass. After that is my uncle Sly. He played drums, and then the youngest is Uncle Charles, and he played guitar. And you know, I think if there's anything about world music that really put me on, even outside of the like social political side of it, it
Mhm.
was seeing how there was a place to refer back to every genre of music. The cool thing about world music that I really, really dig on, especially when it's done in like kind of not, I don't even want to say fusion, but just done with like intentionality to showcase all these different places where somebody can come from, it's still under the umbrella of authenticity. It's still
Yeah.
showcasing that like a part of the world that these folks are coming from is from listening to genres outside of what they might be typically known for. Now there might be like crossovers and bridges as far as like maybe like I don't know, lyrical intention, or like even like what instrument choices were used, or anything like that. But um I don't know, just coming up and getting to be encouraged to be so open to so many different genres of music. I think it did a lot to really influence um, both what I was listening to, like to get into, but also what inspired me to start King Youngblood in the first place. You know?
Yeah, amazing. I mean, your history, your musical roots, your family roots, the social justice part of your roots, they run deep. So it's very easy to see like where musically you are now and how you got there. Talk to me a bit more about family because it sounds like you had a really good family base growing up to the point where, like I said earlier, your mom, Lara, is
Yeah,
your
yeah,
she's your manager. Like, how is what's it like having a mom as the manager?
yeah. Well, for a very long time, there's a fun answer and there's a real answer. So I'll give you the real one
Both.
first. I'll give you the real one first. So my my mom is one of the most professional, experienced, and intentional folks I've ever worked with. When I was really starting to get a lot more deep into this, she has not only been one of the biggest champions for me, but we've had a lot of very important conversations about distinct, you know, having a very focused separation between this is I'm talking with my Ima, my mom, and I'm
Mhm.
talking with Laura, my manager and my business partner. And in every sect of every business on the planet, family owned businesses or family ran businesses have been a very real thing. I think for a long time, I was really worried about like whether or not this was making me like a Nepo baby, or if I was like, I think I had a chip on my shoulder about it for all the wrong reasons. Um, until I had a real moment to look back and really reflect on like, "Oh, damn, I am doing a lot. Like, I am making the sacrifices. I am doing my best to do the not just do the work, but also to make sure that it's not just me benefiting from that work too."
Yeah.
And, a lot of that is things I learned from my mom and how she did business, where she's always been very vocal about reciprocity. She's very passionate, but part of the reason why that there is any moving and shaking whatsoever has been because she's been results oriented. There's been holding space and grace and making sure that we're looking out for people to make sure they're taken care of. And there's also being a realist about the business side of like, okay, what do we functionally need to do to get from A to B?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, working with her definitely required us to have a lot of really serious real talks about like how we're going to go about it and make sure that we're not bleeding in the fact that I didn't clean my room when I was a kid into but also being accountable to each other too. I think it's made for a lot of stronger trust between the two of us. Because uh having that mother son bond, I know she's always going to look out for me and I know I'm always going to look out for her. And it's been, I don't know, I think there's another part too where I feel so lucky that I get to make these memories with her. She's scrappy. She's who I learned how to match my ambition with developing a skill set to actually uphold them and make them real.
Yeah.
I learned that from her, and, she's 65 now, and she came out with us for our last, like, month-long tour where it was, like, her and 5 boys, and, um, I see so much of this as getting to share this journey with her as much as it is making sure that I'm, you know, going about my career in a way that is meaningful to me, to the lineage I've been grateful to be from, but also, frankly, to the community that has upheld me and her.
Yeah.
I think it's part of why we're still in Seattle. I think it's um, also why, like, it's been difficult sometimes to showcase to people that, like, no, she's not a momager. She knows what the fuck she's doing. And I don't know, sometimes folks see us get scrappy with each other and they think that there's something like, "Oh, is this how they talk at home?" And it's like, "No, dude, we're functioning right now." This is how, like, getting to a certain point where you have so much trust in somebody to know that communicating that directly yields the kind of results you both are trying to see. We celebrate our wins just as much as we hold each other accountable to the success we're trying to build for each other, you know? So I'm very, very lucky in that department because she's a huge reason why we've moved the needle as much as we have since starting my career professionally.
Yeah. I appreciate the story. And, that type of stuff is only really successful when there's communication, when there's dialogue, when there's respect for your own personal boundaries as well as the other person's boundaries. It sounds like you guys have that. You actually said something really interesting there that I wanted to comment on. You said Nepo baby. And I think
Yeah,
this is into, what we're talking about now. For me, in life, cliches exist for a reason, generalisms exist for a reason. Oftentimes they're true, but that's not that everything is black and white. We live in this gray. So nepotism isn't necessarily a good or a bad thing. I think it comes down to intention or character. Uh, I was up for an interview at Amazon. I used to work at BlackBerry, and one of my boss's boss, so one of the VPs super high up, ended up at Amazon, and he's like, "You should apply for this gig. It'll be perfect for you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it." And I was interviewing with a guy in the music department, and he's also part of a band. I'm not going to name names.
sure.
I thought we had a good chat, and then at the end of the interview, you know, I was I thought I was being gracious and I thanked him. I was like, I got this opportunity through this other person. And, hopefully if it helps, I can talk to him. And somehow that guy got triggered and he got upset. And then he brought up nepotism and we're not going to hire based on nepotism. Boom, end of story.
Oh,
That's not where I was coming from. You know what I mean? The angle was, no, I know this person. I'm a good man. They could probably vouch for me if you want some
yeah.
additional feedback.
And also, it
So
wasn't like your blood family, dude.
no, but you know what? Even if that's the case, I mean, I do think that even if it's blood similar to what you have going on, there's nothing wrong with that. Because one of the single hardest things about working with people, hiring someone, is the trust that it takes to develop with them. It is the rapport. It is how you work together. And
Hmm.
that takes a lot of time and money. If I have a best friend who is like a super rad dude and he happens to be really good at this particular thing, and I know how to be like, yo, professional relationship, personal relationship, and separate the two, why is it a bad thing for me to hire them? Do you know what I
I
mean?
think I
If
feel
if
you. I
if
I
I'm
think.
like trying to, just funnel stuff off and put cash in his pocket, that's a different story. It comes down to
Mhm.
the intention.
Yeah, I think truthfully, I think there's parts I agree with and parts I disagree with in there because I think where I do agree with the criticism of nepotism is how easy it is for it to be abused. I think
Yes.
very often about like other folks that come from musical families and they lean on the laurels of folks that came before them. You know, they lean on whatever their name might mean to other people rather than creating and also I think it can be a difficult position for some folks of like
Mhm.
feeling like you have to live up to a certain standard or something like that. But I do think that regardless if it is more on the nepotism side or the family business side or whatever it is, I always think there's going to be no excuse for paying your dues and
Yeah.
for putting the work in for something that is supposed to be bigger than yourself. It's supposed to be bigger than your family. Like I am so grateful that a part of the ways that I know the difference, at least with my family, is my folks never stopped me from making my own mistakes.
Yeah.
They always encouraged me to fuck up, to find one, the things I need to learn for myself, but two, how to find my own authenticity as an artist.
Mhm.
And I think when I think of nepotism, and I'm sure at least a lot of people in my generation would think of it that way. There's a certain amount of entitlement that comes with it, a certain
Yeah.
amount of like, um, you didn't earn this. You leaned on relationships that you didn't foster,
Mhm.
or you leaned on work that you didn't do. And I think that for me, it's been really, really important to for me, it's been very, very important to recognize one, giving flowers to my family, the folks that have looked out for me. And that also means looking out for the ways that they've held me accountable, not let me be a Nepo baby, but be like, no,
Yes.
dude, I can't want this more than you do. I can't just like alley oop you or make things easy on you just because you're my kid. You have to
Mhm.
earn it. And I think that has given me so much more of a value for my artistry as well as has helped me recognize that I do want it to be very bigger than myself. I do
Yeah.
want to use my platform for speaking on behalf of mental illness or on behalf of representation in the genre of music I do, or just in the fact of reminding people, regardless of who you are, I want you to know you're safe at my shows. And yeah, I think that the difference in there has always been intentionality.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that it's like I said, it's a gray area, it's a fine line, but intention is so important, character is important. You used the word authenticity, which is probably the word that comes up the most on this podcast.
Well, especially right now, bro.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, I'm 45, so I have probably a different perspective than you, and I don't wanna sound like the old man, but, like, things have changed in my lifetime. It does feel like there's a lot more entitlement and arrogance now globally, and I'm not pigeonholing, like, North America, but just globally, it feels like there is more of that than there was before,
Mhm.
and I feel like, unfortunately, people, whether it's technology, social media, I don't know, um, are not doing the work as much. You know, you and I are grinders and we were raised by people who said like, "Sure, we'll help you out. You can come under our wing, but we're not gonna fly for you, man. You need to
Yeah.
fall out of that nest. You need to break a wing. You need to heal, recover your go. We'll make sure you don't die, but
Yeah,
like
but you have to
let."
learn how to fly.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know what's funny is this ties in so perfectly to 2 things that I want to talk about.
Hell yeah.
Um, there's this term unapologetic that you
Mhm.
use when referencing your band. And then before we talk about it, I'm just gonna go into this other thing. Um, your next album just so happens to be called Outrun Your Shadow. You know, this
Yeah.
is such a good segue into those 2 things. So talk to me about, like, how you how you stay unapologetic. I mean, obviously, it comes from your parents, and there's a lot of influence there, but, like, as you and I know, mindset, mental health, it's an ongoing thing. You don't just, like, wake up every day happy and encouraged.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I really appreciate the question. When I started King Youngblood, I started it because I wanted to be the example I wish I had. I
Mhm.
grew up listening to, like I was mentioning earlier, Soundgarden. I'm a Seattle boy, so very obviously Nirvana, Alice in Chains, especially Soundgarden. But in that realm of music, there weren't a lot of bands, at least that I had access to or easy access to, to discover that we're black, that we're brown, that we're Jewish, that we're mixed. And especially, growing up in North Seattle over here, um, my career with King Youngblood has been really impacted and shaped by knowing that at most shows, I'm the only black person in the room, or the only black band on the bill is King Youngblood. And um, I don't think that's to any fault of Seattle or something like that. Demographics are demographics. But what I do think is that it presented me with a very early ultimatum, which is I'm either going to apologize for taking up space that traditionally has been founded and started by my people,
Mhm.
or I'm going to recognize that being on stage is one of the only places where I'm going to be able to fully be myself without the pressures of acting a particular way to make sure I don't make the wrong person in power uncomfortable, or having to code switch around and people thinking that like somehow that isn't me still being myself, or whatever billion of variables that go into how people might misperceive me.
Mhm.
But on stage, the reason why the reason why I am unapologetic is because it is the one place where I think I really let myself tap into a lot of those repressed experiences, a lot of those experiences or emotions that I want to make sure are only outletted in a safe environment, for
Yeah.
myself and for others too. Music for me has always been an outlet. It's been a opportunity to convert negative emotions or experiences, or even just ones I'm trying to understand,
Mhm.
into ones I'm grateful to share with people. Like our tune "Cried in My Cadillac" off of Big Think. That whole song is about me having a panic attack in a car, and it is became one of the songs that I see people singing along with us with so much joy and passion. And um especially with my other bandmates too, like my drummer Paul, and my bassist Sammy. Sammy is Puerto Rican and Salvi, and Paul is black. Both of them are pastors' kids. They grew up in church. And there's this own set of like judgments and hurdles that they've had to go through to showcase to people in their own communities that like, no, dude, I'm doing my part to also spread positivity, and like to showcase that like there are different ways to not just live your life, but make sure that you're living your life uh for yourself. And the one white dude that we have in the band is playing fucking cello in a rock band, bro. Like all four of us have a very distinct understanding of what it feels like not to belong. And because of it, it makes it when the four of us get together, we are feeding off of each other's chances to be who we really are.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel so bad because I forget which publication and which writer wrote it, but they said King Youngblood are skillful musicians with a ruthless stage presence. And that I don't think you could get it more succinct and accurate than that, because when we pull up, it's different from the nice Cameron that's like asking if you drank water that day, or ask if you need a chair
Yeah.
to sit down if you feeling tired.
Absolutely. I mean, and I'm not a musician performing live, but most of the musicians I talk to say that there's this holy space, this sacred space when they're on stage, when they're performing, they oftentimes feel the most free, the most unmasked, so to speak, where they can just be themselves and let it all out. Do you have in your mind a way to transport that into every other aspect of your life? I mean, you do so much on the social justice and education side. You said your words like, I feel in a safe space. Why is it confined, do you think, to the stage as opposed to everywhere?
Yeah, I think so much of it has to do with agency, in the world outside of stage. And maybe I'll expand it to the stage and studio, I think are
Okay.
two places. But outside of those two places, I'm not in command of what is going on. It's
Mhm.
not my vision that's being enacted when, I'm out on the street or when I'm in, like a different environment or something like that. And that's okay. It's not supposed to be I'm not out here to be some type of dictator or tyrant where everybody has to follow my lead. But I think what it has always come down to and what's made for that safety in those spaces
Mhm.
has been this is the one place where I'm going to showcase exactly who I am, what I believe in, and wanting to make sure that other people are invited into it. I think
Yeah.
that um I think when you're uh I think when you're out in the world, like God, not to get too deep, but like I remember I remember the conversation I had with my parents when they first had to like really keep it real with me about how the rules are different for me as a black person, how the rules are different for me as a Jewish person, even how the rules are different for me as a mixed person of like not belonging in either of those communities fully, or at least not feeling like it.
Mhm.
And um, I think so much of the outside world has been, at least in my experience, has been dictated by kind of navigating how people perceive, misperceive, understand, are open to understanding, or whatever it is, especially when you're a super minority. Like, dude, it's like fucking Drake, uh, goddamn, uh, Eric Andre, and like Lenny Kravitz. And
Yeah.
then, that's I think as far as people get with it, let alone the slurry of other racist tropes or like misunderstandings about both of the groups that I belong to. But when I'm on stage, I have the agency, the control, and the power to showcase that that has nothing to do with me. You
100%.
don't get to define who I am or how I navigate in this space. You might have systems in place that I have to function in order to survive. There might be particular ways I have to move in order to make sure that I come home that day. But
Mhm.
ultimately, when King Youngblood is taking the stage, the reason why there's such a significant, I don't know, personality switch, and I don't know, just that much of that, coming back to it, that much of that unapologetic energy is because it is the one place on earth where I get to enact it.
That's awesome. It's funny, like, I think that, we started this call by saying that love and logic are so important, connection, seeing each other, understanding each other, trying to help one another. I'm not gonna say that racism isn't a thing. I think that most people are inherently good. I think that, for the majority of the world, there is no racism in the sense that we just see other human beings and we connect. I'm probably gonna butcher this, but you just kind of, like, inspired a thought in me, which was you talked about Cobain and the Seattle grunge scene. A lot of that was spurred by, yes, white dudes, but white dudes that didn't necessarily fit in, white dudes that might have been outcasts, white dudes that weren't hip with the jocks or whatever,
Well,
and
I'm
maybe
gonna I'm I'm gonna put you on for a second because grunge music wasn't started by a bunch of black dudes. If
fair,
you
fair, fair,
if you
fair.
if you get a chance, one, obviously we can do the, rock music itself. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, godmother of rock music, literally like first shredder to ever really do it out here like that. But specific to grunge music, have you heard of Tina Bell?
No, but I know she's a big inspiration of yours. I need to check out Tina Bell, yeah.
It's all good. It's all good. I try to speak her praises everywhere I go. But to what you're saying, absolutely. I think the thing that makes me really proud to be from Seattle is not just grunge music being so identifiable with Seattle, but specifically grunge philosophy. The
Yeah,
reason why I talk about Tina Bell is because she not just sonically did so much to influence so many folks. Like Kurt Cobain guitar tech for her band Bam Bam for a while. Like Matt Cameron was playing in that band. And they were playing at spots like the Central Saloon, which ended up being literal ground zeros for not just grunge music, but the grunge community. Grunge philosophy is the premise that your authenticity and speaking whatever your own truth is with it, especially if it is one that's a messy truth, not one that's an easy one to talk about just on a regular everyday kind of schedule. Um, Matched with the support to look out for each other. There's so many different pictures of Chris Cornell, like, literally calling in Eddie Vedder for shows, or, like, even the story of, like, how Temple of the Dog came together for Hunger Strike was literally Chris being like, "Dude, Eddie, you need to come sing this with us." And, that philosophy is so, so critically important, and I think really often something that folks forget about when it comes to thinking about how the grunge era got so big. It got big because it wasn't just particular bands, it was a community of bands that subscribed to the same philosophies. You know what I mean?
I totally appreciate what you were saying, and for me, I mean, I know that music the roots of music go so far back that it's the roots of the roots of the roots. I mean, we could talk about blues, we could talk about jazz, we could talk about how they come from classical, and then the diminished fifth in classical spawned like a totally different style of music, and some argue that's where metal comes from, the diminished fifth.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say, where I was trying to go with it, is just this concept of belonging. That maybe if we remove I'm not saying we should remove race because, like I said earlier, like everything is everything and everything is nothing. And it's very important, like our history, our cultural context. But maybe it just fundamentally comes down to that sense of belonging, right? Like the human connection, the need to fit in. That we're social creatures, man. Like, and if we feel outcasted or pushed aside or marginalized, that's gonna have a huge impact on us. And then we'll naturally try to find a group, someone that will accept us. And I think one of the things that's beautiful about music and what you're doing, what we're doing is that it's just everyone is accepted because we're coming together through harmony, through sound into this very simple concept of it's all the same and it's all nothing, right? Well, there's no difference between you and me. Doesn't mean our
Yeah.
cultures and our pasts aren't important, but like when we come together, you're just another friend.
Yeah. In my family, we have a big belief that music is a universal language, where there have been so many different times where, like, um and I think this is, again, coming back to world music. There are so many different times where you're in a room with somebody that not just has a different background, ethnicity, or experience than you, but quite literally does not speak the same language as you. And yet
Yeah.
somehow through music you can convey the same emotions without even having to have any words or anything like that. I think that um I look at my cultures as influences and inspirations, both sonically, but also with the kind of philosophies that I want to imply in my own career.
Mhm.
Frankly, it's a big reason why, I started Black and Loud Fest anyway, was it was born out of wanting to showcase to other people that not just that black bands weren't just worth giving their due flowers,
Mhm.
especially the history of American music, of like how little folks that did so much to contribute didn't really get a chance in the spotlight until after they passed. But also making sure to showcase to people that it's a celebration of these bands that everybody is invited to. Like, um, I really appreciate what you said about, like, reminding people that the focus should be unity.
Yeah.
Because I think that is really important, especially right now with so much division and so many different reasons to look for why we're different rather than why we're similar.
Yeah.
And also, I think that uh, the most powerful examples of that historically have always been the ones that held space for what the reality of those experiences really are. I
Mhm.
think in order to respect something, to love something, to hold space for it, to get to that unity, it requires that level of honesty to reflect, okay, what actually happened and how did we get there?
Yeah.
And, I think it's all a part of the process, and the folks that really are on that wave are not the folks that ignore it, but rather embrace it and recognize it for how it can make us grow, be it from an accountability standpoint or frankly from like a, dude, I get to experience this and be led into a world that I wouldn't really be led into if somebody didn't be one, didn't be a guide, but two, didn't recognize that the way I'm gonna enter this space is with respect, you know?
I love this conversation. You're clearly, authentically, and unapologetically yourself, which is, I think, the most important way to live, right? To thine own self be true. It's that easy. Ta Let's pivot. You got so much going on. I wanna
Yeah.
talk a bit about mental health. I don't wanna talk for 4 hours because I know you've got other things to do.
We're having so
Well,
much fun. I'm with you. Pivot away, bro. You good.
alright, Outrun Your Shadow, we referenced it, like, t you created this. This is your concept. Are you outrunning a shadow? Is this a message to other people? Is it a negative? Is it a positive? Give me a bit about that concept because it ties into what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. So, we're still a little bit of a ways from releasing it. We've got the Afro Thunder 2 soundtrack LP coming out before then. And we've been dropping singles like our rendition of Black Hole Sun and Garden of Conviction. Those are both out now for that album. But
Video on our
Outrun Your
website.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
Video on our
Yeah.
website.
Go check it out. But Outrun Your Shadow specifically, that album that album has been really focused on coming to terms with a lot of the ways that I think I've changed for better and for worse. That album and even just that song, that titled it is frankly not even about change. It's about the things that we gain and lose in the process of changing. And I think especially after finishing Big Thank, um, I wrote that record and we, recorded it when we were really cutting our teeth while I was in college. So, I was in a very different place in my life when we first put that record out. And also like our identity was a little bit different when we first put that record out too. Like we were the dudes at house shows like um doing the DIY thing, like bring in like, dude, of course you can use my amp. Like, of course we'll bring a PA. Like, of course we'll do what needs to happen to make sure that we have a scene.
Yeah,
And even going even further into like the shit we still do now of like jumping off of fucking amplifiers or setting shit on fire, like all the stuff that is still authentic to us.
yeah.
But Outrun Your Shadow is uh a lot more vulnerable. I come to terms with a lot of the ways that I've, excuse me, I'm attempting to come to terms with a lot of the ways that I've changed, be it as a result of different things that are happening in the world, different things in my personal life, different ways that I made mistakes and tried to do my best to make them right, regardless if, um, that followed through or not, but knowing that I tried my best to do so. It's trying to get to a point of self acceptance that I don't think I quite answer because I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
in part, there's still a lot I'm processing through. I still feel like I'm trying to close a previous chapter rather than I'm getting a chance to start a new one. But I think asking those vulnerable questions, I hope invites other people when they first get a chance to listen to it to ask themselves those same questions too, to have the courage to try to be more vulnerable and honestly more brutally honest with themselves about whether or not they're the kind of people that they really want to be.
Yeah, I love that. In some ways, we can never outrun our shadow. I've really been trying to push into this concept of oneness thanks to one of my therapists over the last year. I was always very stuck on what's moral, what's right and wrong. And she said, like, this is causing you to be very defensive as a person because when something is unfair or whatever, you immediately get your back up. Let's try to shift our mind. And the shadow is really just the dark of who we are, right? The absence of light. And they both need each other to complete the
Yeah,
whole. Maybe it's less about outrunning the shadow. I'm not saying your album. I'm just saying in general. Maybe it's less about outrunning the shadow and more about accepting our shadow and forgiving our shadow.
definitely. I think that's all part of it. I think something else to toss in there is I'm an only child, and I'm trying to be the representation of only children with all of my dear friends. That's like, oh, he's not a piece of shit. Awesome, cool, good. Like he learned how to share. But uh, growing up as an only child, um, the older I get, the more I realize how much that's really contextualized a lot of my experiences as far as
Mm,
like Like I was saying before, me and my folks didn't really have a lot coming up. So in order for me to have, meaningful friendships or chosen family, it meant I had to learn how to share. It meant I had to learn how to communicate with other people and like do all the things that are critical to be able to have any form of community in and of itself. But I
Yeah,
think also, with this album, I think there's a lot of reflecting on how much that isolation has impacted the way that I navigate how much responsibility I take on. I
yeah,
think it impacts how much of uh I think it really illuminated how difficult it is for me to decipher the difference between anxiety and insight, and
uh-huh,
also, frankly, um the difference between accountability and being made responsible for more than what you should be taking on,
yeah.
you know?
I mean, you're saying so many beautiful things there that I wanna kind of bring back to something. I don't have a point, it's just a thought.
Dude,
Uh,
I'm digging it.
Self accountability, emotional intelligence, self awareness, being able to converse with yourself, with other people, with God, whatever it is, they're all so critical.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the nuance is everything. They say the devil's in the detail. I think God is in the details because
Mhm.
you earlier referenced yourself and Drake and some other people, and I apologize, I forget their names. For me, I even thought of there's a character on the TV show Archer. I don't know if you've ever seen that cartoon.
Oh, yeah.
There's a really ripped, good-looking black guy who's Jewish, and then all the girls are, like, swooning over him, whatnot.
Mhm.
Just a little aside that I thought of that dude when you mentioned it. But, like, what's funny is there's so much similarity, but the nuance is that you've all grown up differently, right? You just said you're an only child. Maybe some of the other cats are not. Maybe they had, like, a brother, and then two of them had brothers, but the relationships with the brothers were different, and some went to church and some didn't. So you can't just blanket state that, like, "Oh, this is the experience of that," because you don't know. Like,
Yeah.
it's all, and I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, it's so important to analyze that and to see those things, but it's also so important to go within and ask yourself, "What does it mean to me?"
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's huge. I think, whenever I'm writing, I I'm always trying to strike the balance between making sure I'm articulating what I'm actually experiencing
Yeah,
with, am I leaving enough room for somebody else to recognize themselves in the story I'm sharing? Because I think regardless of how my cultural makeup has influenced my perception, how much growing up in isolation has influenced my perception, ultimately my songs aren't just for me. I want my music to be for folks that feel empowered to ask themselves the difficult questions, the folks that need some extra juice to go do the difficult things, or are looking for their opportunity to experience catharsis through moshing, through being in a moment, whatever it is. And I'm always grateful for the reminder that this music isn't just for me.
yeah. You're doing incredible things. I mean, just to go through the laundry list, you got producer and artist and songwriter, and now soon to be actor or already actor, public speaker. You're championing a lot of different things, which is it's hard to do. Where I'm going with this is your organization, the not for profit. Man, hold your crown. Is that the
Yeah,
one? How do you metaphorically hold your crown in all of what you're doing, in the sense that how do you keep your head on straight with so much going on? And then let's segue into the mental health and why you do this, how you do this.
for sure. First of all, I really appreciate the question. Man, one, my therapist is paid. Shout out therapy. Uh, two, uh, it's been a lot of realizing and trying to operate on the areas where I need support. I
Mm,
think I've been very, very lucky to be born into a family with two parents that, regardless if they have all the answers or have all the right answers, are receptive to those conversations. I can be usually pretty brutally honest or vulnerable with them, but a lot of it in the same realm of why we started Hold Your Crown has been from trying to find more peers, trying to find more people that I can share with and don't just listen, but understand and operate off of how similar those experiences really are, as far as like, be it in how we navigated the impact and the lessons that we drew from them, whatever. We started Hold Your Crown. Honestly, do you remember those, like, I don't know if this was during your time, but do you ever remember, like, those high school assemblies where they would get everybody in the gym, and then they would bring in some, like, old white dudes or, like, guys on BMX bikes, and they would do tricks, and then they'd be like, "Don't kill yourself."
yep,
Uh, yeah, those never fucking worked, and the only things that worked, especially when there were such very real mental illness, suicidal ideation, like, self-harm, like, very serious shit when I was in high school. The only thing that worked to help people work through those things was peer-to-peer conversations. It was
mhm,
talking with other people and recognizing that they weren't alone. It was not being preachy or like thinking that the way that you're gonna like positively impact somebody is by like how well you can land a trick off a half pipe. Like, all respect to bikers and skaters and everything like that, but it was a showcase to us that the disconnect was the people that were trying to articulate a very important message were not speaking the same language as the people that needed to hear it.
absolutely.
Um, I went to UW and I got a degree in communications, and it was just a very, very beautiful, long way to get to the message is the medium and the medium is the message. Um, and so with Hold Your Crown, it's been very centered around events where rather than doing BMX bikes, we're throwing shows, but we're not just doing concerts. Like, we have a panel in there where we are bringing in different people from the communities that we're talking to or the schools that we're talking to, of folks that are, taking on the courage to share what their experience has been on the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yep,
And we're not in the business of telling people, like, you need to go find a therapist or these are the right meds for you. We're in the business of telling people that the stigma surrounding mental illness is not worth upholding if it stops you from being who you're meant to be.
yeah,
And, for me and my own experiences with mental illness, and trying to keep up on my own mental wellness, it's been trying to make sure I'm living the example that I'm trying to put out towards for other people whenever we get a chance to do Hold Your Crown events. And it's hard work and it's vulnerable, and with all the slew of things between like touring and shows and recording and Black and Loud Fest, it's Hold Your Crown is something that like I'm excited to be able to really get back on the pony with, but also it's something so important to me. I want to make sure that when we do it right, because when
mhm.
it comes to people's mental well being, um, I want to make sure that we're being as intentional as possible so we can do the most good we can.
I appreciate you elaborating on what it is you're doing, and I agree with you. It's funny how when it comes to mental health, mental wellness, to use that term, it's so much just about things we've talked about today: authenticity, conversation, communication, feeling a sense of connection to another group or to another person, right? Like, I've been through so many different things in my life, and at 43, I had a whole bunch of stuff unfold, and it was the first time where I said, "You know what? Fuck it.
Yeah.
I am gonna go into everything." And I remember that, like, I have 2 therapists, one that's more official and one that's more of a life coach.
Cool.
And I remember saying with this new one, like, "Okay, I'm just gonna for this first hour, I'm just gonna dump. I'm gonna give you the full history, everything, every single stone. I don't even care about going into it. I just want to give you the download. And that in and of itself felt amazing because I just put everything out there. And then there was nothing in my past that I felt like, oh, there's that tiny little piece of the skeleton left in the closet there. It was just all done. And that was such a huge turning point because I realized like nothing's changed. I'm still me. And she throughout those sessions eventually said like, you're not a good person or a bad person. You're a sum of all these things. So you might feel horrible for these things that you've done. But like, what about the hundreds and thousands of other days that you've lived where you didn't do those things? You have to think of yourself as a complete package and as a whole.
Yeah.
And all it started with just me talking to myself and then me talking to her and then me realizing, okay, this isn't as bad as I thought. And then all of
Hell
a
yeah,
sudden,
man.
you just feel so much better. And I think that that's maybe it's transitional. Maybe we just went in from a period in society where it was not talked about to now it is talked about, and now those were the growing pains of transitioning into it, and now we're just trying to normalize it to a point where I can have a podcast and just talk about this shit with you, and it's like not mental health, it's just how people converse.
Yeah, I think there's been, especially in the world of mental health, even after talking with my parents' generation, there is very clearly a lot more of a norm now that I'm grateful to see that is of mental health being not as taboo as a subject. But also, I think like all things, there's kind of a big pendulum swing where with things being less stigmatized, there's also more people co-opting a lot of the language with therapy, like utilizing it more as a excuse for their behaviors rather than an explanation for their behaviors.
Mhm,
And I think that, in all things, moderation is really important. But I think at the core, I think the fact that we're even to the point where we're able to have a conversation about like, um, not just identifying what mental wellness is, but making sure that we're not weaponizing something that we're trying to encourage people to get involved with for the sake of being okay, I
mhm.
think showcases such huge progress in it. Um, I think there's been a lot of really big strides that have come from so many different people taking the courage to talk to other people about really what they've been not just going through, but also what they learned from it too. Like what strategies were helpful for what environments and contexts, what meds gave what impacts on their bodies and like how it made them feel about their bodies. And like, I'm just grateful to see so many different people talking.
Yeah. I think authenticity for me comes back to embracing who you are and not in a this is who I am, take it or leave it kind of way, in a this is me, warts and all, to use the expression. I now have a very complete picture of who I am, and I'm not going to apologize for who I am, but I will heal parts of me or work on parts of me that I would like to or think I need to. I had a conversation with, he hasn't been on this show, but this is really, really fascinating dude named Len, and we were talking about potentially publishing one of his books, and
Cool.
then he successful entrepreneur, older than me. He started to talk about his mental illness. I think it was OCD. I think he had severe OCD or ADHD or a combination of them. And he was telling me how as soon as he turned it into a superpower, as soon as he turned it into something positive rather than negative,
Yeah.
everything changed. His thought process changed. He viewed himself differently. His performance and his productivity like shot through the roof because he learned how to leverage those things.
Mm.
So there's nothing wrong with being who you are and having different things. Embrace that. Embrace that. Like you cried during movies, whatever it is, like embrace it. There's nothing wrong with it. No one's going to judge you other than yourself. And,
Hmm.
God,
Yeah.
you you've got a graphic novel, you've got I think a documentary you're working on.
Yeah,
There's
man.
there's like I think a play that
Yes, yes. I cannot confirm or deny, but there is a play.
so
There is
you've
a
got a
play.
lot going on, and then there's an album, and then we touched on like another album that's more like fall 2026. Let's kind of wrap with everything that's happening. How do you keep going? Like, what's your motivation? What's your drive?
The biggest motivation I have is when I get to have examples of how I'm doing what I set out to do. I
Mm,
think I can think back to, a few different times where different folks have come up to me, be it like, you know, young black or brown kids, or even folks that are my age or older, and they see us perform and they say, I didn't know we could do that.
mm,
And, I know I said it earlier, but I really do mean it. I started this to be the example I wish I had. And every time where I have an all nighter, or, I have to crank on a deadline or apply for a grant or get my head around like how we're going to book a tour, or all the things that go into the nitty gritty that can be the difficult hurdles.
yeah.
The thing that has always gotten me to push through those moments is when I remember that it isn't just about me. I didn't start this for it to be just about me, and I'm damn well not going to stop. Um, I I think so often about different folks that have come up to me and talked about how my music impacted them in ways that I had no idea it could. And so many different memories, or, moments where people, even my own bandmates, have spoken to me about how much they've grown and how much they've changed from being a part of this project. And I'm not in this for myself. I'm in it for leaving behind a positive impact. So when I'm in the ground, I know I did everything I could.
Hell yeah. I don't know why, but you reminded me just now of this amazing Simpsons like episode, very classic, where Lisa's having a whole thing. She is just not happy, and then she gets a little piece of paper, and it says, "You are Lisa Simpson." You
Mm,
know, this is the message that I think we're both trying to convey, is that your imperfections are your perfections. You are perfect the way you are. You are loved and special, and you just need to see that the way other people do and go.
yeah. Yeah, man. I'm grateful for the chance to speak with other like-minded folks, man. It's a pleasure chopping it up with you, Chris.
Hell yeah. Listen, I'm already a fan of the music, but I love then taking the persona, the personality, feeling the authenticity, and then being able to apply it, because the meaning of that music, of that art, just goes to a whole other level. I am grateful for your time and for your candor. Why don't you wrap us up? I always like to pass the mic to my guest to send us off.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I always am gonna invite people to be along for the ride. We just finished our first East Coast and Midwest tour over here in the States. We're doing another run, it sounds like in February, to West Coast and like the western part of the Midwest. But yeah, if folks want to, support what we're doing, people can donate to Black and Loud, they can donate to Hold Your Crown, they can donate just straight up to King Youngblood. We're always looking for patrons and just different folks that um see how much we're trying to make sure that this rising tide raises all ships. And um I'm always going to be grateful for everybody along for the ride. And yeah, folks know how to support us. Go find the Instagram, go find the Spotify, go find the Bandcamp, wherever's good for you. But um just don't be a stranger. That's all I ask.
For your final word, what is the main lesson, the main advice, the main thought that you want to impart on viewers?
Hmm. There is so much power that returns to you when you don't think about the things you have to prove, but rather the things you have to execute.